They taught you how to solve equations, but not how to solve people. They told you to be honest, to be kind, to just be yourself. But what they never said is that the world doesn't reward truth. It rewards strategy. In school, you learned information, but outside, you face influence. The rules are unspoken. Every smile, every silence, every tone of voice hides intention. And if you can't read it, you'll always play by someone else's script. This isn't a lesson in deceit. It's a map of awareness. Because manipulation isn't always evil. Sometimes it's defense. Sometimes it's survival. And the man who doesn't understand it will always be controlled by those who do. So tonight, we're stepping off the surface, into the quiet psychology beneath every human exchange. These are the 8 invisible rules of manipulation, the ones they never dared to teach you in school. They tell you honesty is strength, that if you speak your truth, people will respect it, that transparency builds trust. But step into the real world and you'll see something else entirely. Honesty is only powerful when it's strategic. Most people learn this lesson the hard way. A man opens up about his ambitions in a room full of competitors. Another shares his insecurities, believing it makes him relatable. A third explains his plans in detail to someone who only listens to gain an advantage. They all walk away thinking they've connected. They've actually been mapped. In every social hierarchy, information is currency. The more of it you give, the cheaper you become. Because once someone knows what drives you, what you want, what you fear, what you value, they can predict you. And anything that can be predicted can be controlled. Honesty feels noble, but it's often tactical suicide. That's why manipulators thrive in honest societies. While you reveal yourself in the name of trust, they reveal only what creates effect. They shape impressions instead of facts. They don't need to lie. They simply decide which truth to reveal and when. That's what schools never teach. Honesty and strategy aren't enemies. They're partners. Truth isn't always sacred. Sometimes it's situational. The illusion of honesty is that people will treat truth the way you do. They won't. They'll treat it as leverage. They'll test how you react to compliments, criticism, silence. Every answer, every micro-expression gives them data. And when they've gathered enough, they can play you like a predictable song, because you've already taught them the rhythm. This doesn't mean you stop being genuine. It means you stop being unfiltered. You learn to draw the line between authenticity and exposure. You speak with clarity, but not transparency. You give people enough truth to connect, never enough to control. Machiavelli would have called this the art of calculated disclosure. Say less than necessary. Reveal what builds position. Conceal what builds vulnerability. Because mystery doesn't distance people, it directs them. It makes them lean in, fill in the blanks, imagine more than you've said. And in that imagination, you quietly gain power. The modern world rewards the expressive, not the intelligent. It teaches you to share before you understand the cost of sharing. But in the language of power, every word is a move. And every move that isn't intentional is emotional exposure disguised as authenticity. So ask yourself, do you speak to express or to position? Do you reveal your truth or do you direct it? Because the first earns sympathy, the second earns control. And that's the first rule they never taught you in school. Honesty is power only when it's designed. Next, we uncover why no one ever teaches this, the secret education that runs beneath every system of success, the hidden curriculum of control. Every system has 2 curriculums, the one they teach you and the one they use on you. The first is polite, equations, grammar, theory. The second is invisible, tone, timing, persuasion. And it's the second one that decides who rises and who stays unseen. You are told knowledge is power, but knowledge without leverage is background noise. You can have the right answers, but if you can't direct perception, someone with half your intelligence will walk away with your reward. Because power doesn't belong to the informed. It belongs to the influential. School trains you to pass tests, not people. You learn how to memorize, not how to maneuver. You're taught to raise your hand, not raise your value. To wait for permission instead of designing opportunity. That's the hidden curriculum. Obedience disguised as education. They teach you to express yourself, but never how to control what expression costs. Real manipulation, the kind they never define, isn't deception. It's direction. It's the ability to understand emotion so well that you can guide it without resistance. The corporate world, politics, entertainment. Every major hierarchy runs on this law. People don't move because they're convinced. They move because they're felt. Emotion decides first. Logic follows later, pretending it had a say. Think about it. The most persuasive people you've ever met, teachers, bosses, influencers, leaders, didn't drown you in data. They didn't explain endlessly. They created rhythm. They used pauses, tone shifts, eye contact, and silence like weapons. They understood that communication isn't words. It's control of emotion in real time. That's what's never printed in any textbook. How to read tension, how to mirror tone, how to bend atmosphere without being seen doing it. It's the hidden curriculum of control, taught through example, absorbed through exposure. The quiet student learns it by watching the popular one. The underestimated worker learns it by observing the manager, who never raises his voice, yet everyone listens. And one day, you realize the entire world runs on invisible strings. The difference between manipulation and mastery is intent. Both understand how humans work. Only one uses it for harm. To manipulate unethically is to enslave emotion. To use manipulation ethically is to govern it, in yourself and in others. Because pretending influence doesn't exist doesn't protect you from it. It just ensures you'll always be its target instead of its architect. That's why the most dangerous form of ignorance isn't stupidity. It's emotional blindness. You can solve problems, but not people. You can build systems, but still get dismantled by sentiment. They never teach you that part, because awareness disrupts hierarchy. A population that understands persuasion is hard to control, so instead, they train you to believe control is evil, while quietly using it against you every day. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every conversation becomes a negotiation. Every compliment hides intent. Every silence becomes signal. And suddenly, you start noticing how easily the world can be moved. Not through truth, but through feeling. That's the real education, the one hidden behind the polite version they sell you. And if you learn it with awareness, you stop being a participant and start being an observer. Because influence isn't something you fight, it's something you understand. And once you understand it, you unlock the foundation of every power dynamic on Earth. The law of emotional leverage. Logic explains people. The emotion moves them, and the one who moves them controls the outcome, quietly, invisibly, and completely. This is the law of emotional leverage. Whoever influences feeling dictates behavior. You can argue forever with logic and win nothing, but make someone feel, and they'll move mountains for you without realizing why. We like to think humans are rational creatures, but look closer. Every decision we make is emotional first, rational later. People don't buy products, they buy confidence. They don't follow leaders, they follow certainty. They don't fall for ideas, they fall for how those ideas make them feel about themselves. That's why those who understand emotion rise faster than those who understand information. You can memorize data, but if you can't manipulate mood, you'll always stay behind someone who can. Because influence doesn't come from what you know. It comes from how you make others experience what you know. Imagine a conversation. Two people debate. One brings evidence. The other speaks with conviction, rhythm, and emotional precision. The facts might be equal, but the result isn't. The confident one wins, not because he's right, but because his energy feels right. That's emotional leverage in motion. Manipulators use this law instinctively. They sense what you crave, validation, belonging, respect, and feed it just enough to gain control. They build emotional credit, then cash it in when it matters most. It's a trade invisible to the untrained eye. Influence disguised as connection. But here's the deeper truth. Emotion isn't just a weapon, it's a currency. If you give it too freely, you become predictable. If you withhold it completely, you become unreachable. Mastery lives in balance, knowing when to make someone feel seen and when to make them feel uncertain. Because uncertainty creates pursuit, and pursuit creates power. You don't need to manipulate people. You just need to understand the exchange, the emotion for influence. Every smile, every pause, every silence, either deposits or withdraws from that emotional account. And those who master this invisible economy of feeling can shift entire situations with a single reaction, or the lack of one. Most people try to win arguments. Strategists try to win states of mind, because once you shape how someone feels, they'll justify the logic themselves. They'll defend your perspective as if it was their own. That's how persuasion becomes invisible. It stops feeling like control and starts feeling like truth. So, remember, if you can read emotion, you can predict action. If you can guide emotion, you can design it. That's the law. And once you understand it, the next question becomes even darker. If emotion is the lever, what hides behind the mask that pulls it? That's where we go next, into the mask of intent. Power is never what it looks like. It's what it hides. Every interaction, every smile, compliment, or handshake carries intent. But intent is invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It positions itself. The greatest manipulators, the most effective strategists, the quietest leaders, they all wear masks. Not to deceive, but to direct perception. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. That single sentence is the blueprint of psychological survival. The world doesn't reward honesty of motive. It rewards control of image. And those who understand that rule never play fair. They play effective. We're taught to be ourselves. But yourself is not one version. It's a collection of personas. Each one serves a context, a strategy, a goal. You don't talk to your friend the way you talk to your rival. You don't negotiate the same way you comfort. Every mask is a tool, and pretending you don't wear one only means someone else will choose it for you. The mistake naive people make is thinking that masks are lies. They're not. They're filters. Filters that protect truth from those who would misuse it. Filters that shape how the world receives you, instead of letting it define you. Because in the game of perception, being transparent isn't noble. It's negligent. Think of influence like theater. The stage isn't false, it's focused. The lighting, the movement, the silence, it's all designed to make the message clear. Without direction, even truth becomes noise. The mask gives your truth form. It tells the world how to interpret what it sees. Manipulators use this instinctively. They mirror vulnerability to gain trust. They project strength to silence opposition. They present empathy to gather data. Their faces are scripts written for effect, not expression. And while the world reacts to appearances, they quietly sculpt outcomes. But here's the paradox. The more authentic you are, the more masks you need. Because authenticity without control invites intrusion. Not everyone deserves access to your full truth. Most only deserve the version that serves the situation. That's not deceit. That's discipline. The art of the mask is not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about protecting who you are from those who haven't earned the right to see it. A lion doesn't reveal its claws unless it intends to use them. Likewise, your motives should remain behind glass until the moment they're needed. Control of perception isn't manipulation, it's armor. Because the moment you stop controlling how people see you, they start controlling how they treat you. The mask is not weakness, it's strategy. And the one who controls their presentation controls their narrative. But there's another layer to this power. One that doesn't hide intent but reflects it. A technique older than deceit itself. The subtle art of turning people into their own mirrors. That's the next evolution of control, the mirror principle. The strongest form of control isn't domination, it's reflection. Because people don't resist mirrors, they study them. The mirror principle is simple. When you reflect someone's tone, rhythm, and energy back to them, they stop defending themselves. They start feeling understood. And once a person feels understood, they become open to suggestion, not because you forced them, but because they trust the version of you that feels like them. Most people think influence is about persuasion, convincing others to agree with you. But real manipulation doesn't fight resistance. It redirects it. The mirror doesn't argue. It aligns. You become a reflection of someone's emotional language until they forget you're even speaking a different one. Watch the most persuasive people in the world. They don't talk the most. They listen the most. They don't impose. They adapt. Their tone shifts to match yours. Their pace slows when you slow. Their energy mirrors your energy so precisely that you begin to feel safe, like you're in sync. And safety is the most addictive emotion on earth. That's how manipulators disarm you without saying a word. They let you hear yourself in their voice. They let you see yourself in their eyes. You start trusting them, not because of who they are, but because of how perfectly they echo who you are. It's the oldest psychological trick in human history. People follow reflections of themselves. But the mirror principle isn't just for manipulation. It's for awareness. If you use it consciously, it becomes empathy with precision. You can understand people faster, deeper, more completely than they understand themselves. And when you understand them, you can predict them. That's the line where empathy becomes advantage. Think about it. When two people argue, neither one is listening. Both are fighting to be seen. But the mirror doesn't fight. It observes, absorbs, and responds strategically. And in doing so, it creates emotional gravity. People feel drawn to you because you reflect what they wish the world saw. That's not manipulation. That's awareness turned into leverage. But this power carries a risk. If you mirror too much, you lose your shape. You stop being an observer and start becoming an imitation. Influence without boundaries becomes infection. That's why mastery of the mirror requires detachment. You must understand others deeply without absorbing them. So the next evolution is not about reflecting others, but protecting yourself while doing it. Because without emotional control, every mirror eventually cracks under pressure. And that brings us to the next stage, the discipline that separates manipulators from masters, the discipline of detachment. The most dangerous manipulator isn't the one who understands emotion. It's the one who feels nothing while using it. But there's a paradox here. You don't need to be emotionless to master influence. You just need to be unattached. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's the mental distance that lets you see patterns others are blinded by. Because the moment you need something, approval, control, victory, you lose the ability to act freely. Need is weakness disguised as drive. The one who needs to be liked can't speak truth. The one who needs to win can't adapt. The one who needs to control never truly controls anything. The manipulator without detachment is a slave to the outcome. They push too hard, talk too much, overplay their hand. They start chasing reactions instead of creating them. And once emotion enters strategy, precision disappears. The disciplined strategist, on the other hand, moves differently. He can feel emotion without obeying it. He can want something deeply, but act as if he doesn't. He can lose an argument and still win the room, because his composure stays intact. He understands that power is never loud. It's balanced. In every game of influence, the one who cares less always controls more. Not because they're indifferent, but because they're free. Freedom is the highest currency in human interaction. It means you can walk away, stay silent, wait longer, or say no, without fear of loss. And the man who isn't afraid to lose anything gains the ability to choose everything. Detachment isn't built overnight. It's forged through repetition, pausing before reaction, listening before judgment, thinking before emotion finishes its sentence. It's the mental muscle that keeps your internal temperature steady, no matter how heated the moment gets. People confuse detachment with indifference, but they're opposites. Indifference doesn't care. Detachment cares intelligently. It chooses what deserves attention and what doesn't. It's the filter that protects you from wasting energy on what can't be controlled. Imagine two negotiators. One needs the deal. He's already halfway compromised. The other wants it, but can walk away if the numbers don't align. Guess who dictates the terms? Detachment is leverage made emotional. It makes your presence heavier because your decisions are never desperate. This is why the most powerful people rarely chase. They attract through composure. Their lack of urgency makes others adjust their tempo. They don't manipulate through tricks. They manipulate through calm. But calmness alone isn't enough. You can be detached and still invisible. To lead, to persuade, to truly influence, detachment must evolve into something larger. A quiet force that commands without demand. That's the next stage of mastery, the one most never reach. The architecture of invisible power. Power doesn't always announce itself. In fact, the strongest kind rarely does. It doesn't shout, demand, or threaten. It whispers through structure. It bends outcomes without bending itself. It's not the voice in the room. It's the rhythm everyone unconsciously follows. This is the architecture of invisible power. Control so refined it no longer looks like control. At this stage, manipulation evolves from action into atmosphere. You no longer persuade directly. You design conditions where your desired outcome becomes the most natural choice. People think influence means convincing others, but the real architect doesn't convince. He constructs, he arranges environment, timing, and perception so subtly that compliance feels like independence. No one feels forced. They feel like they decided. That's the brilliance of invisible power. It replaces resistance with ownership. Machiavelli would have recognized this as the highest form of rule. When the people do what you want while believing it was their idea all along. That's not manipulation in the cheap, emotional sense. It's psychological architecture, the art of shaping possibility itself. To understand it, imagine a conversation. Instead of demanding agreement, you set parameters that make disagreement feel irrational. You don't tell people what to think. You shape what they think within. You create emotional incentives that reward compliance and punish defiance, not with fear, but with subtle discomfort. Silence, disapproval, exclusion. The smallest social cues can steer behavior faster than orders ever could. That's how invisible power operates, not through confrontation, but through context. It doesn't push, it pulls. It's the gravity in the room that everyone adjusts to without realizing they've been moved. You see this in every hierarchy. The quiet executive who speaks last and whose word becomes final. The negotiator who never demands, yet always gets the better deal. The man whose approval is rare, but whose recognition feels like oxygen. These are not coincidences. They're structures built through patience, consistency, and psychological calibration. Invisible power takes longer to build, but once built, it doesn't need maintenance. It sustains itself through reputation, expectation, and emotional conditioning. People internalize your presence even when you're not there. They adjust their tone before you speak. They second-guess their choices when you're silent. That's the true definition of control, when your absence still dictates behavior. But this level of influence carries a hidden risk, because once power becomes invisible, it also becomes addictive. You start believing you're untouchable, that your precision makes you infallible. That's when the architecture begins to crack, from the inside. To sustain it, you must return to the principle that started it all: awareness. Control, no matter how refined, must serve something higher than ego. Otherwise, invisible power turns into invisible decay. And that realization leads us to the coldest truth of all, the final boundary between mastery and corruption, the final law. Every form of power carries a hidden expiration date, the moment it stops serving awareness and starts serving ego. That's the point where mastery becomes manipulation and strategy becomes sickness. At first, learning influence feels like clarity. You see the invisible strings that guide human behavior. You begin predicting reactions, controlling outcomes, moving through the world like a shadow behind the curtain. It feels like intelligence. It feels like freedom. But that feeling, that rush of control, is the trap. Because the moment you start enjoying control for its own sake, it starts controlling you. You begin engineering every interaction, analyzing every silence, seeing everyone as a potential move. You lose the humanity that once gave your observation meaning. What began as protection quietly becomes addiction, the hunger to always be the one holding the invisible strings. That's why the final law exists. Never lose yourself inside your awareness of others. The more deeply you understand human nature, the more responsibility you carry not to abuse it. Because power doesn't test what you can do to others. It tests what you can resist doing when you know you could. Machiavelli hinted at this truth but never said it out loud. The ultimate strategist isn't the one who manipulates best. It's the one who can manipulate and chooses not to. because self-control is the final boundary between mastery and madness. You can move through the world bending energy, reading emotion, shaping perception. But if you start believing you're above the game, you've already lost. The architect becomes the prisoner of his own design. The observer becomes trapped in his own reflection. The art of manipulation, when mastered fully, stops being manipulation at all. It becomes awareness. It becomes patience. It becomes choice. Because when you truly understand people, you don't need to control them. You just stop being controlled by them. That's the full circle, the invisible line between influence and integrity. And it ends here, with one cold truth carved into silence. The highest manipulation is self-control, because no one can play a man who plays himself. In the end, manipulation isn't about deceit. It's about direction. Every word, every glance, every silence. They shape the world around you whether you notice or not. Some people learn this by instinct. Most learn it too late. They confuse emotion with truth, reaction with connection, and honesty with exposure. But the few who see beneath the surface understand. People aren't logical. They're programmable. And every interaction is a form of code. So use what you've learned carefully. You can move people with precision or destroy trust with the same hand. Power is neutral. It only becomes dark when it serves nothing higher than itself. Understand it. Don't worship it. Because once you know how to shape the game, the only question left is, will you play it or rise above it? This was the art of manipulation. They don't teach you in school. Stay sharp, stay unseen, and most of all, stay in control.